Okay, welcome back to the old switcheroo where we are talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jaymo. Join us today. We are going to be talking about a genre of games known as shoot 'em ups, or sometimes called vertically scrolling shooters, in an episode that I am calling Highway to Bullet Hell. We're going to be talking about Xevious the Avenger on the NES and Star Soldier also on the NES. Mike, I think you like my title today, right?
Yeah, I'm on board for
Okay,
this.
because you're a classic rock guy. You just went to a Foreigner concert, right?
I did.
And they were playing with another kind of sort of metal-ish rock band. Who was the other band they were with?
It was Foreigner and Loverboy. It was sort of Aqua Teen Hunger Force themed in a sense.
Yes, yes. I was like literally the episode, the bands that Carl talks about on the episode where he has that like magic belt or whatever. So how was the concert? Like, I mean, because they're getting up there in years, aren't they?
Yeah, well, due to the hurricane that came through California, they were
Yeah,
running
which was
late.
cool.
Yeah, and so Loverboy did like half the set that they've been doing, but all I really needed Loverboy to play was Everybody's Working for the Weekend, which they did.
They did.
Yeah, that was the one
Heck
song I
yeah.
needed out of them. They played it.
Heck
It was
yeah.
good.
That's awesome.
And Foreigner is good as always. Because I've the first time I saw them, I only knew their song titles because of Aqua Teen Hunger Force,
Right,
and
right.
they were by far the best of who I saw that night.
I'm going
So
to ask what's probably a stupid question, but are they the band Foreigner? Are they immigrants, or is it just like the name doesn't mean like what you think it would mean?
I'm not sure in that I forget. It's one of the bands that has kind of had turnover a bit. So
Oh,
they did have British members. I'm not fully sure at the time how like from who started in that band and who I saw recently are not the same set of people.
yeah. And I guess if they're British members and the band started in Britain, then they would not be foreigners at that point.
And also like names are confusingly meaningless. Like the band America formed in the UK.
Right. Yeah. And Mike, I gotta ask, are you being nice about the way I spelled the title, or are you not getting my pun, or are you just being cool about it? Because I'm waiting for you to acknowledge it.
What what am I missing here?
Highway, I made it two words.
Yeah, we're in space, aren't we? Isn't that what we're doing
We
here?
are, and also I think it's a apt description for the second game we're gonna get to. Do you have any experience with vertically scrolling shooters or shoot 'em ups?
Um, I would say I think the ones that come to mind are like Galaga that feel like they're in the same realm.
Yeah, and I guess Galaga and like things like Space Invader. Well, not Space Invaders. What am I thinking of? Games like that. You're sort of one screen and the enemy's coming towards you. There's not a sense of movement like you have in these games. My history with the genre kind of started with this game Raptor Call of the Shadows. Did you have this game as a kid?
No.
It came free with the PC that my dad got from Fry's Electronics. If you remember that band, not band. Excuse me. Wow, I really screwed this up. I would ask you to delete this, but I think mistakes are genuinely interesting. What is Circuit City? Do you remember Circuit City? Were you a Circuit City family in the
Oh,
'90s?
no, but I
Okay.
when you start going to the older, no longer existing stores, it just reminds me
Yeah.
actually about that Loverboy they used working for the weekend when they did the commercial recently to try to get I think Radio Shack back like in vogue.
Yeah,
And it's
Radio Shack is still
and
alive and kicking
they
somehow.
just had a whole bunch of cameos of people from a couple decades ago, all like
Yeah.
going into a radio show, and it was like I think it must have been a Super Bowl commercial. It was a great commercial
Yeah.
that led to nobody going.
Well, at least we got the good commercial out of it.
Yeah, the commercial was great.
So this game, Raptor Call of the Shadows, my brothers, if they watch this episode, they'll remember this. It came free with our PC from Circuit City, and it had like just really cool graphics. You can even see like the detail in the land, sea, and air enemies you're fighting in it. And then, I always, as a younger man, wanted to play Ikaruga. Ikaruga was supposed to be maybe the greatest game this genre has ever had. It was on the Dreamcast, and what made that game novel was that you had the ability to change the color of your ship at will. So if your ship was red, it would shoot red projectiles, and if your ship was white, it would shoot white projectiles. But the reason that's interesting is that the enemies have that same ability. So if a red enemy hits you when your ship is the color red, it heals you instead of hurts you, and vice versa. So it was this constant like balancing act you had to do. It's on the Switch if anybody's interested. It's supposed to be fantastic. It was also just notoriously difficult, so I could never really get into it. Had you ever heard of Ikaruga before?
No, and I really like that mechanic
Yeah.
of like healing in the process, and it's not quite strategic, but it's a lot more intricate in what you're having to think about.
Than what we got in this episode's games. I think probably though the best vertically scrolling shooter I ever played was the spoilers for Sonic Frontiers, but the last boss where the game switches from a 3D open world game to a vertically scrolling shooter. Just kidding, I freaking hated it. I'm just taking every opportunity I can to talk about it because people don't acknowledge how terrible that game ended. Although Sonic Frontiers has DLC coming out, so hopefully we'll actually get a proper final boss as opposed to this weird shift to a different genre of game. Well, Mike, so let me dive into our first game today, which is Xevious the Avenger. It was released on the NES in 1988. And I've got the description here from Nintendo Switch Online. It says, control the Solvalu fighter, and interesting, it's spelled differently, and destroy the Xevious forces. Fire the Zapper missiles, Zapper is capitalized, against air-based enemies, and drop the blaster bombs, blaster is capitalized, down upon ground-based targets. Destroy Andor Genesis to earn bonus points and beat the high score. Unique enemies, interesting background music. They use the word interesting in the official description. A variety of vertically scrolling background environments and many hidden gameplay features differentiated Xevious from the other shooting games released at the time. Are you devious enough to beat Xevious? So that is the description of Xevious for the NES. And, since first impressions are often based on the, box art you'd see in a store, Mike, let's take a look at the box art for Xevious and Xevious the Avenger. Starting with the North American release here on the left-hand side of your screen. What do you think of this cover?
Why does that get to be in space? We spent the whole thing over like forest on this one, right?
We sure did. Yeah, it's very clear from, actually playing Xevious, you are in the atmosphere. Like you are probably like maybe a mile or two above the targets that you're attacking. And the cover very much implies that you are in space. Yeah, it's false advertising. I also think that would you agree that the layout of this is kind of crowded?
I would say I think the crosshairs that this puts, like we got the ship firing missiles
Yeah.
at stuff, which is totally a thing that's supposed to be on the ground, I believe, and is now in
Yeah.
space.
Well, we'll talk about that because that's you're both right and wrong.
Yeah. The crosshairs, the decision to put crosshairs on here, and somehow it just the crosshairs don't seem to be adding anything other than my own confusion because the crosshairs are in front of the ship, but behind the missiles the ship is firing.
The layering is off, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not
Wow.
really unless that's meant to be a second ship and we are firing the missiles at the next because that should still shouldn't be crosshairs. Yeah, I have no idea why the cross. What, yeah,
Visual listeners, you got to check out the YouTube version of this episode so you can see. Mike,
I
it's
sure
not
hope
Mike's
someone got
fault.
in trouble for that blunder.
Yeah, it's and also like it sort of kind of looks like the crosshairs. I mean, it's okay. So this is despite the fact that it's not showing you attacking land targets like you do in this game. It is kind of communicating how the game plays. You've got they're firing missiles. You've got the ship blasting off. You've got this enemy in front of you. And one of the things that makes this game sort of unique is that there is this ever present crosshair on the screen to show you where your bombs are going to hit. But it's just I don't know. It's just like not enough room for all these things in the image. And then in the middle, well, not the middle, kind of the top left of the crosshairs, it says mission : seek and destroy Xevious enemy aircraft and bases. And it's just something about just the and bases. It's just like, what did you need that? And it makes it very grammatically clunky. I will take this image any day over the PC release, which Mike sees on the right-hand side of the screen. Mike, give me your take on this. This. Let's call it a work of art. Sure.
This just feels like they made it out of clip art. This is just like
Yeah.
5 images out of this, just kind of put onto like a green grid, which
Yeah.
weirdly gives. I feel like that's more authentic to what we played,
Yes.
but
100%.
there's no sense. It's not a dynamic cover at all. It's just
No.
like, look, here's all the things that we had images of.
Yeah. And like and it's just the perspective is all off and the things are, the ships, it's like the player ship and the enemy ships, but then they don't even really look like they're flying towards each other or flying at all. And like the
Do you think
back,
the two tanks here are in fact the same tank copy pasted?
I mean, it's got to be, right? It's just different sizes.
Like I'm looking at that, like I can't tell if they literally did just like and put the second one over here, or if they actually like drew two.
And it's just wild to look at this because, Mike, can you see the logo, the company logo that handled the PC release of Xevious? Can you say the name? Do you see it there at the top?
Is is that Enix as in like Square Enix?
Yep. Yeah. Now, granted, this was before their merger with Square, but it's like they make some of the most high quality games of all time now. And so just to have this sort of rinky dink, you don't see this often. It's like, like Disney, but it's like this really terrible quality image. Well, Mike, I do have some Xevious trivia here for you. It was published by Namco, which, they purveyors of all things Pac-Man and Tekken, and most recently Elden Ring. It
Can I
was
ask a
developed by,
quick question
yeah.
before you go
Oh,
further?
yeah. No,
Because
sure.
you keep calling it Xevious.
Do you not say it that way?
I was going to ask if that's how. I have no idea how to pronounce this with an X at the start like this.
Yeah. So Xevious spelled Xevious. What are the other possibilities?
Um,
Exivus? That sounds like the Frank Costanza's fake holiday from Seinfeld.
I mean, it could well be Hevious if we want to go with more of a Spanish pronunciation.
Evious.
I did also consider Kyvius if this was meant more to be like the Greek letter chi,
Wow, you put a lot of thought into this.
because I have
I
no idea how to say this word.
yeah. It occurred to me too. I looked it up and I was like, does this mean anything? Is this a real word? And nothing that I could find.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so you have Masanobu Endo to thank for that. He worked on a few other games that we've mentioned in this podcast before. He worked on Columns, which we'll be playing later. Dig Dug, which we will be playing never. Although Dig Dug 2 Trouble in Paradise, check out that episode. And one of my favorite action franchises, Bayonetta. Bayonetta is just a really wildly over the top action game in which you play as a witch with a gun in each hand and also guns attached as her stiletto heels. And she attacks enemies by turning her hair into these monstrous demonic constructs. Yeah, Mike, I'm gonna guess you never played Bayonetta.
No, although at least I do recognize that, although I did not know about the heels until this picture. So I was going to
Yeah,
ask
pretty
about
great.
that if you hadn't said it.
Yeah, Bayonetta is a weird franchise where like it's so deliberately like pervy and like sort of male gazy that it sort of comes back around the other side and ends up being more like almost satire. Or
Nice
someone's compared it.
rationalization.
Well, no, but I'm serious though. Like, there's been a lot of discussion about like how Bayonetta is almost closer to like a drag show in like its spirit and its energy than it is, like something pornographic. But I don't know. The games are super cool. Might actually want to do a special episode on those one day, just because they're all available on the Switch. And so, with Xevious, it's interesting because, like Dig Dug 2 Trouble in Paradise, the North American NES release, it added the subtitle The Avenger, but that exists exclusively on the printed materials. So the box art here with Xevious The Avenger. Did you manage to get a hold of the manual of this game?
I had.
Okay. Do you recall if The Avenger was on the booklet as well? I'm just curious. It doesn't matter, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, let me check.
Okay. Well, while you're checking for that, I'll give you some more trivia on
Actually, yes, it
Xevious.
was.
Nope. Okay. Okay. Um, so the original concept for this game was actually called Cheyenne, named after the attack helicopter, because the player would have been piloting a helicopter during the Vietnam War. And, presumably as that conflict became more and more controversial, the decision was made to shift the aesthetic to a science fiction piece. And this is taken from a 2003 interview with the developer in the GSLA archives. And Xevious is credited as one of the very first video games to feature a complex story. And Mike, I'm hoping you can help me out with that because I didn't get any sense of story from the game itself, or even that description I just read. It's just like, oh, blast the alien ships, and like, does the manual have this grand story that I kept reading about in my research?
No, I think it's basically just like a
I
yeah.
feel like you should leave that pause in.
The game description.
Yes.
Xevious is the classic arcade game brought to home use by Bandai. The game begins with Solvalu fighters flying over the Xevious enemy territory. You are controlling Solvalu with its anti-aircraft missiles and surface bombs. The bomb sight is shown on the indicator attached in front of Solvalu, so you can drop bombs on the enemy bases as they appear during your flight. Additionally, the enemy floating fortresses Aegianesis will appear.
Wait. Why'd you stumble over that word? Did they spell it differently?
I just don't. That's not a. It's not a word I'm familiar with, and
Okay.
it's somewhere between Genesis and Geonosis in my mind.
Oh, weird. Okay.
So it's like I've kind of had to work with that one. Your goal is to destroy them and proceed on with your mission.
This does not sound like a story, right?
Not, I don't think so.
Well, okay, so listen, if anyone is listening to this, if anyone ever listens to this, leave us a comment, leave us a voicemail. What is the story behind Xevious? Because multiple sources in my research credited this as being one of the very first games to consider a story element. But that just, I don't know, man. I feel like this game has as much story as like Space Invaders. You know what I mean?
I
And,
disagree.
well, Space Invaders has more of a story.
Yeah, I understand what's happening in that. They're invading
Yeah.
from space.
So the and speaking of invasions from space, I don't know if you noticed, but the ship designs in this game, a lot of them were based on famous ships from science fiction movies. So the Solvalu, the main ship you fly, is based on the Nostromo from Alien. The copy enemy is the Millennium Falcon, and the Tarazi is the Cylon Raider ship from the original Battlestar Galactica. As you were playing, Mike, did you notice the sort of familiar ship design in the enemies and the player character?
No, I did not.
Yeah. I I don't know. It feels kind of unoriginal, to me. I guess they're a little bit different, but I don't know. I didn't get a particular thrill out of that. Let's go over what we like about this game. Let's compare the Joy Pros to the Joy Cons, if you will. The combat in Xevious, it basically on two different planes of action. You have these fast moving airborne enemies that have to be taken down by your blaster, which I believe is the A button. And then you have land based enemies that have to be hit using these slower moving bombs. So, you had to kind of constantly be considering what attack do I need to use to take down this enemy. And you only have a split second to do so. So there was sort of like a juggling act, and it required like kind of quick decision making. Although really the only decision you're making is what button are you pressing, the bomb button or the zapper button. How'd you feel about that, land versus air being sort of two different potential targets? Like, did you enjoy it or?
I'm not gonna say I really enjoyed it. Like I know it adds a little bit of a sense of depth to it,
Yeah, very
but
shallow depth, I would say.
yes.
Yeah, like a thimble. That kind of depth. Yeah, I don't know. And then you have this ever present crosshair. You can see in the screenshots here. It is so that you can aim your bomb attack, which, like I said, is slower moving. And so this was the only way that you could hit land enemies is by dropping these bombs that would sort of fly out in front of you at a slower clip and then detonate on the ground. And this is how you took down the Andor Genesis. That's how it was called in my research, Mike, not this Geonosis thing you were being assaulted with in the booklet.
Yeah.
So in the end, go ahead.
Okay. So in your thing, it is Genesis, like the word Genesis. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Is it spelled differently in the booklet? Because in my research, it's just spelled Gen. A lot of spelling in this episode.
Yeah.
Genesis.
Yeah. In this, it is Ageanesis,
Ooh.
which kind of is close to Aegean, like the sea, but then you add the
Yeah.
stuff at the end.
Hmm.
Yeah. God, I don't know what's going on with this.
Well, so, this game is also, people say on the internet, one of the very first games to have a boss battle. And so you would take down the motherships, if you will, by firing a bomb that was perfectly placed in the dead center of this big target. And, to me, it was sort of like supposed to be reminiscent of Luke at the end of A New Hope, where he's lining up that photon torpedo and it like perfectly goes down the Death Star's. Was it an exhaust port? I feel like I'm nailing it. Was it photon torpedoes down the exhaust port?
Yeah, 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 it was more of a vent, but yeah.
I
Like
knew it. Okay, exhaust vent, sure. That's the vibe I got though, and when you would get that perfectly aimed bomb and take it down in one strike and the whole thing kind of blows up, it felt kind of cool. That's about all I can say that's nice about this game. Do you have any Joy Pros with Xevious that I didn't already mention?
the background is colorful.
Is it? I that doesn't. I'm counting 4 colors on the screen.
They're vivid colors.
Are they? The forest looks pretty gross to me. It's kind of a sickly broccoli green. But I get your reaching. Yeah. It's I have a lot of Joy Cons about this
Yeah,
game. Can we get to those?
let's go. Let's get to those.
Yeah. So let me start with this whole mothership concept because this experience was very different in arcades. Now you had made a comment about the box art and you said, "Oh, that big target is up in the air, but it's actually more on the ground, right?"
Yes, which may also reflect how far I could ever get in this game.
Yeah, this game is, Mike truly gaming retro. He doesn't rewind or save, so, I feel like this game must have been almost unplayable for you. Like it's so difficult and your ship is so slow and there's just so many shots firing your way. How far did you get?
I mean, I don't. It's tough to know, really,
Yeah.
in part because there's not. So the way it does levels
Yeah, quote unquote levels.
is, I think the manual did explain this, where it's like if you, it uses the areas you'll see just forest as like the markers between levels.
Yeah, the checkpoint, if you will.
Yeah, and so if you die, it's not quite a checkpoint because if you die and you are less than 70% of the way to the next one, it'll put you back. If you're more than 70% of the way, it will move you to the next one.
It'll move you to the next stage even though you died.
Yeah, because
Huh.
it's like you're mostly there. We're gonna move you along.
That's basically how the public education system works. Oh, I shouldn't say that as a teacher, but it's true. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and so I don't, but it doesn't really, when you're playing, it doesn't let you know like, oh, that's forest number 4. So I'm
Yeah.
not really sure in that sense. I can say that I think I usually the furthest I got was somewhere in like the 30,000s in terms of points, 30 to 40,000.
Okay. I mean, I guess
And
I got that far because you see on the left hand side that screenshot I took.
yeah, and I feel like that roughly worked out to the point where I reached the giant tumbling squares that I have no idea what to do with.
Yeah, so the enemies, a lot of them are based on science fiction ships, and then there's just these huge panels of metal that just fly towards you, and you cannot kill them. And they don't even seem antagonistic. They don't aim towards you. It's just like something to dodge.
Do you think they're based off the monolith from 2001?
I mean, I thought it. I honestly thought it, but it's just like it's weird. And I was also like, is this like
Or
debris? Or
or it's foreshadowing for Enix joining with Square.
oh, that was really a stretch, but I'm proud of you. Well, okay, so I want to finish my point about these motherships because in your mind they're not even motherships; they're just bases, right? You thought you were bombing a base.
I don't think I saw one of those things.
Oh, you didn't even get this far. Okay.
No, I don't think
Well,
so.
this. Okay. Well, in the arcade, these things would move and they would, keep pace with the player and be shooting you and shooting at you until you landed that perfect shot. And so it was kind of neat to watch videos of that because it was like, oh, this is like a dogfight. But I would assume the NES could not handle a moving object this large. It's like a fourth of the screen. And so in the NES, this mothership doesn't even move, and so like you sort of have removed the boss element that this game was known for, sort of innovating, because I don't consider it a boss if you can just pass it without destroying it. Like you can just fly past it. That's not a boss. That's just like sort of a weird obstacle. And so, I have a lot of other problems with this game. I think this game is almost offensively ugly. The environments you're flying over, there's absolutely zero texture to it. Like you're supposed to be flying over these dirt roads. It's just like this line of kind of gross looking yellow. And, Mike, check out the top right hand. What do you think of the roads here in this top right hand screenshot I'm showing you?
I don't think they're terribly effectively laid out for to be roads.
That, and also they didn't even get the lines straight. Like they're all weird and crooked, and there's little like juts of yellow that don't really belong if this is a road. It's
I wonder if this reflects that you talked about this originally being where they were thinking that this would be more of like a Vietnam War era game.
Okay, so like the
where,
bombed out roads kind of thing.
not necessarily bombed out roads, but just that you're not dealing with heavily engineered roads. You're dealing closer with like paths that have been cut through.
I guess. I don't know. I feel like we're reaching to forgive, a pretty awful game. And there in the bottom screenshot, Mike, there's your flipping panels,
Yeah.
And I guess we're over the desert in this screen because everything is literally just one giant block of yellow. Like, oh, I hated looking at this game, Mike. What just beyond the colors, you got anything to say about the graphics?
I mean, how many bits is this supposed to be that we're at in gaming? Because this
8.
I
This would be
feel
8.
like I have played Atari games
That looked better.
that look better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild, pretty wildly bad. And then, there's no weapon pickups. There's no power-ups. Your ship moves so much slower than your enemies that dodging just feels hopeless. And I got a question for you. I bet you never saw this, but can you see in the screenshot, Mike, those 2 weird little gray diamonds that are next to my ship?
Yes.
Did the booklet mention anything about these? Because every couple of levels, and again, it's even hard to tell when levels are ending because it's all just this constant stream of ugly environment. Every now and then, these 2 little kind of cubic looking diamond things would appear in front of my ship, and they would go, whee! And they'd rev up and they'd shoot off in front of me. And I never figured out what it did. I don't know if it gave me extra points or an extra life, or if it was supposed to be like attacking something, but it would happen every few levels, and I had no idea what it ever meant. Can you give me any insight?
I'm looking and I can't tell that one of these may be one of those. I can't really tell because the drawings that the manual has are not super. And
What do you mean? This is just a cube. How could they not draw a cube?
I mean, even the things that I know that I saw, I don't necessarily recognize in these drawings.
Are you telling me, Mike, that this game even is bad in manual like form, in printed form? It's still badly done.
Yeah, although it's got some amazing terms for things. So our air characters, I'm going to spell these out because I'd just like to see how you would choose to pronounce some of these.
Okay, hold on, let me get a pencil ready. Okay, go for it.
All right, so this is the air characters.
Sure.
The only one that I think is sort of easy is, I think this is the most common one because it basically looks like a donut with a dot in the center, which is a Torroid.
Yeah, toroid.
Yeah, that one makes sense. I can pronounce it. We have
I still feel like I'm saying it wrong. Though. Toroid. And by the way, about the toroids, those are the first enemies you see, and they fly towards you and then away from you without hitting you. And Mike, did you notice that I let the music for this episode, the intro music, play a little longer than I should have?
Yes.
That's the quote unquote interesting music. It's the same 32 notes. We had Brian, shout out to Brian. He counted the notes for us. It's the same 32 notes on loop. So you have the thing at the beginning of the level, which is, here we go. And then you have this. That's the music for the entire game. It drove you nuts, right?
A bit, yeah. Is it also that weirdly kind of reminds me of, I think Centipede might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, kind of, but Centipede felt less offensive. Maybe because just the game was more fun. I don't know.
Yeah. being good gets you a long way.
So the reason I played that for so long is, first of all, because I wanted the listeners to understand just how cloying this endless loop of notes is as the soundtrack for the game. But also that huge stretch, it was 28 seconds. That's how long you can fly in this game without pressing a single button before you get hit. Like, all the enemies just come at you and then leave you alone for a while. I'm like, how long is this going to go? 28 seconds, apparently. Okay, so Toroid, give me some more enemy pronunciations. This is fun.
All right, we have a manned plane that retreats off screen after attack that is spelled
Okay.
Talken.
Okay. So Talken. Let's pause and let our listeners play along. Listeners, grab a pen and pencil. Talken. Well, my brain wants to go Tolkien, but is it Talken? Okay, keep going.
Yeah, the corkscrew
I
flight.
know. Wait. Hold on. Wait, sorry. What's your theory? I want your answer too.
I mean, I think Talken is where I would end up, but it seems weird in any case.
It's still weird. Okay, what else you got?
The corkscrew flight attack plane that is Jiara.
Giara.
We have something that suddenly appears then disappears as it fires at Solvalu, which is ZKART.
Skart.
I'm going to stress that there's not like a hyphen or a capital K that is treating that like that should be a single blend there with a ZK.
Not to give up the end of the episode, but I want to point out that I'm having more fun guessing the pronunciation of the enemies than playing the game itself.
Yeah. And then we have one that's just described as the mysterious fighter. Beware.
Okay, give me one more. What do you got? One more.
ZOSHEE.
Wait. Slow down. ZOSHEE. Zashi. The Zashi. She's cookie. I don't know, man.
And then the ground ones are I think almost more interesting because I think these are all the early early ones here.
Okay. So, is there one so good you got to give it to me?
I'm just going to give you the rundown because these are all weird.
Okay, do it.
So we've got this is small and large sizes that do not attack Suvalu, which are the pyramid things that we go over.
Yeah, right. They're kind of just targets to get points.
BARLA.
Barla. Barla. Sounds like a name I would make up when I was doing DMing work as a Dungeons and Dragons DM.
Yeah.
All right.
Appears from everywhere and fires missiles continuously is LOGRAM.
LOGR. Yeah, Logram. That one's actually okay. Logram's the least offensive as far as.
When destroyed, enemies' attack power is temporarily decreased.
Mm-hmm.
Is SOLBAK.
SOLBA. A soulback.
The manned amphibious vehicle that will not attack Solvalu.
There's a lot of vehicles that don't attack. Are we knowing that this was originally based on Vietnam? It's kind of upsetting how many of the enemies don't attack you and you bomb them anyway. What you got? Give me the spelling of this innocent victim.
GLOBDER.
Globder. Globder, a clay fighter character.
I think this is a variant of an earlier one because it attacks while moving along roads, and it's DOMOGRAM. Domogram. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which just does feel like the Pokemon evolution of the Logram.
Did you just make a Pokemon reference I don't even get? What's the Logram? Is that a Pokemon?
That was the earlier one that we had. The appears from everywhere and fires missiles continuously. The
you're saying that, like, okay. You're using a metaphor.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that we've it's just like, oh, this one can move now.
Logram, Demogram,
yeah,
Instagram.
And
Instagram. Come on, Mike. Instagram. You got to give me that one. That's the final evolution.
It attacks everywhere.
Yeah, there you go.
And then the last one is just high firepower. Beware.
All right.
DELODA.
DELOD. Oh my Deloda. Oh, Deloda. Here we go.
Yeah. So,
and you think anyone's still listening to this? We just did a spelling test. No, it's not a spelling test. It's a pronunciation test.
an insight into the manual, which you kind of see that a lot. There's drawings that go with that did not
Yeah.
help,
I
because
mean,
they look better than what it looks like in the game in many cases,
yeah.
which is not hard to do, but it doesn't mean identifying that that's what things are isn't great. But a lot of those descriptions are not actually helpful to dealing with them.
Right.
It's a lot of just like this will shoot at you and this won't. And it's like that feels like a little bit of an oversimplification.
This game is all overly simplified. There's just
Yeah.
not much to it, and what's there is just not much fun,
Yeah.
I think. The aforementioned interview with GSLA Archives, or I should say, that's where the interview can be found. The lead developer says his one regret with Xevious is that it lacks a proper ending, which, by the way, as an English teacher, I don't know if you can accept the praise for having one of the first video game stories when your game literally lacks an ending. I think climax and resolution is a kind of a pivotal. You have to at least have two of one of those two things. Otherwise, you just have a concept. There's no. This is a premise, not a story.
I mean, I think you could argue something has is a story, but it doesn't really have an ending. Like, I think you can 100% argue that Python and the Holy Grail doesn't really have an ending.
Well, and for the longest time, the Walking Dead comics, one of the most critically acclaimed comic series of all time, its whole concept was it's a never-ending comic. They kept writing and drawing and just like what would happen next, what would happen next, and just tried to tell the lives of characters. No, which is a cool concept, but you know what? This is not cool in this
I
game,
appreciate
man.
that they
I
at least
just
are, and that they did that and they stuck with it, unlike the never-ending story, which definitely does end.
you actually wish that movie wouldn't end. Is that what you're saying?
No, I just
Is
want
that
them to
movie
be
good?
honest about it.
I was shown that movie as a very young child, and like there's a scene where like the big flying puppy gets like hurt or something, and it disturbed me so much.
I think it's a thing you have to watch the right age as a kid, because I watched it as an adult and was
Not as
underwhelmed.
appealing. Yeah. Well, so Mike, I mean, I feel like we've hit all the joy cons with this game because there's a lot of them, but everything we just described is kind of every element of the game. Like, oof. Anything else to say about Xevious or Exivus or Yevious or whatever it's called?
I don't think so. I don't
All
think
right.
there's like I am sure there's more things to complain about. I bet I'd
Yeah.
have more if I'd gotten further.
Yeah. Well, let's get further in the episode. Let's go on to our second game today, Star Soldier on the NES. All right. So released in 1989 for Nintendo America, Nintendo of America, excuse me, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Let me read the description for Star Soldier from the Nintendo Switch Online catalog as we make our way and blast and bomb through all these games. It says the standard for vertically scrolling shooters. Star Soldier is the original game that spawned all of the titles in the long-running Soldier series. Go inside a floating space station inhabited by a giant computer known as Starbrain. Your mission, to stop Starbrain's galactic invasion by piloting Caesar, a new compact space fighter, through 16 deadly stages. Collect power capsules to increase 3 different attributes of your ship: firepower, movement speed, and defensive shields. Blast wave after wave of approaching enemies, or use the innovative trap zone feature to fly beneath a landmass and avoid incoming fire. Conquer each stage to make your way to the final confrontation with Starbrain. And so this is Star Soldier, released 1989. Let's go ahead and take a look at the box art. I got a lot to say about the box art, Mike, but as per tradition, I'll let you take the first crack at it. What do you think of these two covers? I think because one is essentially, it looks like more of like a photo or based on a photo of a real person. The other one's kind of anime. Oh, let's talk about them separately. What do you think of the North American release here on the left-hand side?
This there's something about this of just like sort of washed out guy and then like a ship superimposed over that makes this feel so very late 70s sci-fi dystopia
Yeah.
thing.
Now, by washed out guy, do you mean like he's a washed out actor or he's like washed out visually?
Washed out visually.
Okay, because I think the I think the argument could be made that that guy looks like he has a lot of pain in his face. For those who aren't on the YouTube channel for audio listeners, we have the Star Soldier logo at the top, and there's like some sort of Buck Rogers sort of space hero guy with a blaster in his hand, and then you got the player ship in front of him and kind of flying around him and zapping the enemies. And then in the Japanese release for the Famicom, you have, very much the center of attention on the cover, the pilot, except this time he's like an anime guy with a really long left leg. I don't know if you noticed that, but like the perspective on this image is way off. It's like, it reminds me like when the Kardashians get busted for like using Photoshop on Instagram and like things are elongated impossibly. But wouldn't you agree both of these covers are kind of misleading?
I mean, yeah, they both imply that there's like a person you ever see.
You never see them or even hear of them. There's no text on the screen of what you're saying. There's this implication of like a human element and a character that you'll play as or no, but it's just you're just flying the ship. You don't even see their little top down of their head in the cockpit. Like if I saw this game, I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna play as that character, not just that what that character drives.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I don't know,
do
man.
also like the touch that the North American one is very much trying to give off a Star Wars like logo vibe with the way that they're writing Star Soldier.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that because in my notes I said, the kind of the nicest thing I can say about this cover is that I like the logo. Logo's
Yeah,
not bad.
yeah.
I mean, for Japanese one too, it's also, it's not bad. It's just I don't know. And you had mentioned the layering problem with the Xevious cover, how the missiles were, in front of the crosshair. Did you notice what's going on with the ship, the enemy ship, the Star Brain here in the Japanese cover? Do you look at the mountain range?
I
Do you see
mean,
it?
I think you mean that it's behind the mountain range?
Yeah. Like, because if it's behind the mountain range, then that implies that this thing is really massive.
Yeah.
And, well, okay, but did you ever get to Starbrain in this game?
I got to one of them because
One of them, yeah.
you have like the it's like every
Lesser
fourth is
Starbrains.
bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Super Starbrain. This is the boss that appears every 4 levels. And it's just not that big. I don't know. I get maybe I'm being too nitpicky and too harsh on it, but I don't love either cover personally.
Actually, the weird part about that is that there is like no depth to that ship on the Japanese one. Like if you look at that,
Yeah, right.
like it's on an angle. Wait, are these the flipping squares that we fought in the previous game?
There's a canonical connection. No, no, these are slightly more interesting than that enemy. Well, yeah. Any other thoughts on these covers before I get you into our knowledge is Nintendo Power trivia section?
I don't think so. I think it's just like I don't know why you put people on this.
Yeah, it's kind of misleading. Well, this was developed in Japan. It was published by Hudson Soft. We'll meet them again in our Mario Party episode. And in North America, it was published by Taxon, who we'll meet again in our episode for Mappyland. Mappyland is one of our animal platforming games. We have an upcoming episode. And I couldn't find much on this game, to be honest with you. Star Soldier does not have really much about this, initial game in the series, but it does have a long-lasting legacy. There is a Nintendo 64 game called Star Soldier Vanishing Earth, which is sort of the same kind of vertically scrolling shoot 'em up gameplay, just on the 64. I'm optimistic we might get that one day in the catalog, because we got the original game, so it sort of implies a working relationship with whoever holds rights to this game series. There was a Wii game in the series called Star Soldier R, and charmingly, I would say, Caesar made a cameo appearance as a playable character in Super Bomberman R. Super Bomberman R is a Bomberman game on the Switch, but it's sort of like this if Bomberman got the Smash Brothers treatment. So you can play as Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. Simon Belmont is a character from Castlevania. You can play as the Arbiter from Halo, and you can play as Caesar from Star Soldier. And I might have given it away by showing the image, Mike, but do you remember who Caesar is in this game?
No.
Caesar is the ship.
Okay,
So,
I thought it was the ship, and then I'm looking at
yeah,
this, and I'm like, I thought I was wrong here.
yeah, you're right. So I just think that's kind of cute that, if YouTube watchers, if you look at the video version here, it's the ship from Star Soldier, but it has little arms and legs. And, cleverly, the cockpit is kind of more like a mask that this player is wearing. So I don't know. I kind of like that. And speaking of things I liked, there are 2 hidden messages in the code of Star Soldier. One is I love M. Akakura, and the other hidden message in the code of the game is Mad Woman Megumi. And it is presumed to refer to the female penguin from another Hudson Soft game called Binary Land. This is a puzzle game where you control two penguins simultaneously and have to navigate them both through a sort of obstacle course. But also, it is referring to a project lead at Hudson Soft named Megumi Okumura, with whom lead developer Kaikuta Masaaki was falling in love. And he would slip her love notes into the programming of several other Hudson Soft titles. And this is according to the website Cutting Room Floor. Any thoughts on all that, Mike?
So this is in the code itself, you said?
Yes, it's in the code itself. And what's really cute too is that if you go into the game's files and you edit the code, so the code with the message I love M Akakura and Mad Woman Megumi, if you actually change that in the code, it will cause the game to crash. And that's funny because developers hiding messages in the code of the game is a long-running tradition in software development. But usually if the code doesn't actually do anything. So I love that this guy loved this woman so much that he made it so if anyone tries to erase his message of love, the game ain't gonna work anymore. He took extra time to program that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm that or it's badly written code. Like I'm wondering how you do that. I'm wondering if it's like if it alters the code and you've got like you have a go to this kind of command and you offset things that it stops working.
Yeah, maybe. I'll be honest, I don't know enough about coding to say one way or the other. Well, so can I get into my Joy Pros, what I liked about Star Soldier?
Yes.
So it might just be in contrast to Xevious, but Star Soldier, it's just immediately more enjoyable. The graphics are more detailed. You have like the space background with the star scrolling past you. The ship, it moves faster. The enemies felt scarier or at least weirder. And the music, it's not what the kids would call a banger, but it's at least pleasant. Like I enjoyed how this game looked and how it sounded. What about you?
Yeah, I'll definitely say, I mean, right off the bat, you are correct. One of the greatest Joy Cons for Star Soldier is that it meant that I was no longer playing Xevious.
Yep. Yeah. This game definitely benefited from being back to back
Well,
with a game that is
yeah,
just
of
much
the two,
worse.
the one that I was actually at least that I was more willing to go back and play more for this was
Yeah.
this one because I at
Yeah.
least it had more going for it.
Sure did. And you can also destroy pieces of the environment, which you could sort of do in Xevious, but in this game, destroying pieces of the environment, you can look for hidden power-ups that upgrade your shields or your speed or your attack power. And was just something you expect from just pretty much all games. And so when it was missing in Xevious, it was just like, oof, this game is as bare bones as it gets. So I was happy to see it here. And this is why I called the episode Highway to Bullet Hell, because Bullet Hell is a nickname for this genre where you just have a bunch of projectiles that you have to dodge. Despite not being explained in any way, Star Soldier has a really creepy kind of psychedelic vibe to the whole affair. You could blast these giant eyeballs that are just emerging from the space station you're flying around. And as you hit them, they squint more and more. So it's like it looks painful. It looks like you're actually hurting this giant creature. And there's these mask-like faces that will assemble in front of your ship and attack. You got these kind of fleshy pustules kind of gripping it, which is weird because like to me all this shows like some sort of like alien life form, but the plot of the game, right, it's supposed to be a supercomputer, isn't it?
I don't I don't know. I mean, I guess because it's
Let me go back to the
yeah.
It says your mission is that yeah. The floating station is inhabited by a giant computer known as Starbrain. So I guess the implied storytelling is that this supercomputer is gaining sentience and is becoming like a living organism, which is pretty creepy. But I just don't think that if a computer gets super smart, it's gonna like start sprouting eyeballs. That doesn't seem. I don't know. It's super weird. You have these bosses at the end of each level called the Star Brains, which I mean, I feel like this game should have been called Star Brain. Honestly, it's a lot more interesting than Star Soldier, but it's like this big kind of mass of metal with this like pulsing brain thing in the center, and you have to attack these things very quickly, because if the boss fight goes for too long, the Starbrain will escape and you'll have to redo most of that level again. You said you got to the kind of smaller Starbrains, but never got to the giant Starbrain boss
Yeah, I
battle.
could get through one. I could get through one level, and then I would die somewhere on the second level.
Yeah, I mean, these bullet hell games are just so much more approachable with the ability to rewind. Although some would argue it kind of ruins the point because it's supposed to be all about the challenge with the games like this.
Yeah,
Um,
suffering builds character.
Something like that, yeah. But Starbrain, though, I mean, I don't know. It's just I thought it was kind of a bland boss fight, although I appreciated the sort of ticking clock element to it. Do you have any idea, any opinions of these as our central antagonist?
I mean, I guess the at the end of the first level, beating that thing was not that hard.
Yeah, it's in fact the smaller Starbrains are kind of laughably easy. You just pound down the fire button, and as long as your weapon is upgraded, they'll die in like maybe 5, 10 seconds.
Yeah, and so actually, I think according to the manual, only the big star brains can escape.
Oh, is that true? Maybe that's true.
I mean,
Oh, okay. It's the only time it ever happened. I just assumed I was killing the other ones fast enough.
yeah, no, according to that, because it's that the star brain is just shoot him 32 bullets in the center. He will be destroyed. The
Oh,
big
that gives
star
you a number.
brain,
Okay.
yeah, the big star brain is first you have to get the 4 power cells and then destroy the center brain. And that's if you can't destroy him within a certain amount of time, he will escape.
It's weird they call them power cells though, because if YouTube viewers, you can see a picture of giant star brain. The four targets on the boss fight, it's more like gun turrets because as you shoot them, the enemy is able to fire less projectiles. So let's talk about the trap zone mechanic because this kind of drove me nuts. It was this game's sort of big catch is that you have these objects you're flying around, which is essentially your environment. You're flying around this space station. You're never like on any kind of planet in this game. And you could go behind the architecture of the level. And at that point, you can't see your ship and you can't take damage, but neither can the enemies. Like you can't fire back there. So it's sort of like this escape mechanic. But I found it really unwieldy because I never knew what objects I would go behind and which ones I wouldn't. Did you have that experience as well?
Yeah, no, I was really hoping you had explanations to this because
Yeah.
it was a thing where it's like, if that was a thing I had any control over that I could comprehend, that would be neat to be like, oh,
Yeah.
this is going badly. I'm going to duck behind this. But you end up in a situation like, oh, sweet, I'm going to go grab that power up. And it's like, and now I'm behind the thing. What the
Right.
heck? I don't want this.
And it's weird is that you would go underneath it, right? And then come out the other side. And then if you backed up, then you could get what you missed. So it's like it was triggered only on one side of the object. And I don't know, it kind of bummed me out because like this is like you said, this is a cool idea, but make it so that I know when this is gonna happen so that now it's a part of my strategy, not just a discernment like where to go? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
behind the thing again.
Yeah. It needs something either I control when this happens or you have visually indicated when the heck this is going to happen. And
Yeah,
or the other
like
thing would be like, a group of enemies show up and you start firing and then you just freaking disappear. And because you're still moving up at a somewhat forced rate, it's like,
yeah.
well, great. I am moving towards them and I can't shoot them. So
Yeah.
it's not like I can like wait in cover until they go away. It's just like, oh, so I just can't shoot until I reach them. This is
Yeah.
wonderful.
There was like literally like one time the whole playthrough where it benefited me because I was being attacked by one of those creepy blue masks. And so it was kind of coming after me. And so I ended up behind it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to hang out here until it backs up a little bit.
Yeah,
But
the
I don't know.
evil Lazado.
Yeah, is that the phase? Lazard? The names in these games,
Yes,
like,
you can destroy
wow.
him with 16 bullets
Yeah.
or find the secret method of destroying him more quickly.
I just like that they're called bullets. Like I like they're like lasers or something to me. It's just this weird idea of this ship just it's like it's like a attack helicopter in Vietnam kind of. So yeah,
Yeah, I appreciate that they decided to go with powers of two for how you kill things.
right.
It's just a nice touch.
So can we criticize this game? Can we give our Joy Cons?
Yes.
So thankfully this game's not endless like the other game is. I don't know if I told you that. Oh yeah, we talked about it. It just sort of loops. This game is still very repetitive. There's 16 levels, but you repeat the same cycle of 4 stages, and the boss fights repeat until every fourth boss fight is the big star brain. But even then, you just do that 4 times. And so, it's nice that you can upgrade your vehicle, but sort of a tenet of this sort of genre of game is that you pick up different weapons that change your attack patterns, or you have like a bomb attack to like wipe out everything on the screen, or at least like a missile attack to like, get rid of targets more effectively. This game just lacks all those things. And
I mean, it does have a way that you can clear the screen.
What do you mean?
So the power up that you get that starts off by increasing what your ship can do.
Yeah.
So you start off with firing 2, and then I think the next one is like you fire 2 forward and 1 back, and then the next is like 5 or 6 radiating outward.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool. You're right. When you get your weapons fully upgraded, it shoots in 5 directions. So you're right. It is filling the screen with your shots.
Well, it's that, but it's also if you get another power up at that point, it will clear the screen.
Oh, it'll just destroy every enemy automatically?
Yeah, or all or most or something.
Okay. I mean, it's hectic. It's kind of an arcadey shooter, so I didn't really
any of your flying enemies. So it'll clear a lot of them.
Yeah, most enemies are flying in this game, and most things that are attached to the environment are like just sort of destructible objects.
Yeah.
So that kind of covers my cons, because I already talked about the lack of ability to rely on the trap zone mechanic to hide behind shots. Do you have any other joy cons before we go to our final critique and rankings of these games?
I mean, I think the biggest thing really just is that disappearing behind things really wrecks this and makes this very unforgiving because you have it's a thing that you have no control over, and I feel like the same things I would sometimes go behind and sometimes not.
Yeah.
And so it's like I really have no feeling that.
It almost feels more like a glitch at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will say I did at least appreciate a little bit. So this one also does here's a whole bunch of enemies, and this has drawings that are, at least you can recognize them, but they're a little bit more detailed in the manual than they are in the game, but it's clear what's what.
Yeah. So like the snail enemy here
is cargo.
As an escargot. That's cute.
Yeah. So they have a whole bunch of names for all these things.
Any interesting ones?
Let's see. Well, I mean, we've got Lazado's that flying mask thing.
Yeah.
Those ground-based skulls that show up a lot.
Right, which aren't really enemies. They're just kind of targets.
Yeah, are Tolud. Tolud.
Tolud. Okay.
One of the interesting things that it does for most of them is just it's just drawings of them and names.
Yeah.
And they all look sort of neat. The interesting bit is for a few of them, it gives you extra bits of information.
Like strategy?
Or at least hinting a little bit of strategy, a little bit of hinting that there's which ones there's additional stuff to do with. So like there's a high score tip that says Zagu, which are the little Z's that would sometimes show up on the ground for extra points. DeLeo, which are the eyes on the ground.
The big eyeballs, yeah.
Yeah. And Lazado, which is that mask, hold the secret of getting the highest score. Study each one to find the secret. There is also a secret enemy which you must try to find.
Interesting.
And
Any idea?
I have no clue. But I do appreciate the sense of, it's like, here's some background stuff. It's like, you should look into these extra things.
Yeah, it's a little something else to think about when you're playing the game.
Yeah.
Did the booklet talk about the floating eyes? Maybe that's the secret enemy in the bottom left here.
Floating eyes. I think, those are, let's see, Shadiko?
Shadiko. Like the mushroom? No.
2 will appear at the same time. You can destroy either one with 16 bullets. When you destroy it, all other flying enemies will disappear.
Yeah, it's just there's like this idea of like depth to this game, that most people I think won't ever really notice. That is interesting.
Yeah, it adds a bit more flavor, and I appreciate something that's willing to go, hey, yeah, you should look into this thing. It does something, but we're not telling you what exactly. I kind of appreciate that sense of nudging people towards exploration, because the game, you can't do that well with the gameplay at this point in games, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it helps to have something that goes like, yeah, no, you should, with like that with Lazo, that the weird floating head thing, to be like, yeah, no, there's a secret thing you can do with this. I'm like, that is intriguing.
Right. I wonder what it was though, because I just figured you could just
Yeah,
shoot it and kill it. I wonder if that's
yeah.
what it was.
Apparently, you can kill it faster. And then it was also just interesting with the this has what is it called? SP mode, SP plus, something like that.
Yeah, so Nintendo Switch Online, some of the games, most of them on the NES emulator, have an SP version or a special version. This game was a weird choice because it boots it up for you at the end of level 8, right before you fight the giant star brain, which is a weird place to start you because, first of all, that's not the first giant star brain, that's the second. So it's really putting you in smack dab the center of the game. And why wouldn't you just put us at the final boss battle, the final giant star brain, and let me see the credits easily? Like, what's the point of giving me the ability to skip half the levels? I don't get it.
I'm not sure either. And I'm like, I tried it, and all that happened is that I very quickly took
You
damage, and then
die.
I was back to a regular ship, and it's like, well, now I'm at level 8, and I'm not good at this game, and I have nothing else
Yeah.
going for me.
Yeah.
So I tried it. It did not go great. It was interesting to discover that then as soon as you lose, it starts you back over as though it's just like a fresh game, not back at the level 8 starting point.
Oh, like it took you back to level 1?
Yep.
Dang. So they must have programmed it to be like a player on its last life or whatever.
Or I mean, I still had, I had to fail multiple times, but it's like it's not as though when it's game over, it's like okay, we're going to start back to where we started you off. It's more like it's more like you've just been handed the controls of someone who's gotten fairly far in the game with 6 lives and stuff.
That's
And if
usually
you
what SP modes are.
okay,
Yeah, it's like it's not a hack. It's more just like, hey, here's a thing that would be hard to get to on your own. Give it a try.
okay,
I think it's kind of neat, but it's a pretty underused system.
yeah,
Let's get to our critiques then. Nintendo or NintenDON'T. Every episode we declare whether the games are worth your time. Let's start off with Xevious. Mike, I think this is probably my first Super NintenDON'T. This might be my least favorite game I've ever played for this podcast. It's not fun. It's actively uncomfortable to play due to the ugly graphics and the borderline painful music. And I know the series has its fans, but it's almost certainly due to the arcade version and or its sequels, not this 8-bit abomination, as I called it in my notes. Maybe noteworthy at the time, but it just absolutely does not hold up. So Super Nintendo on Xevious, where do you fall on it?
yeah. I mean, I was definitely considering it a Nintendo. You're now making me consider Super Nintendo as an option, and I think I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, it's awful. It's just not. There's just nothing there. Nothing to even ironically appreciate. And then Star Soldier, also for the NES. It's a Nintendo for me. If you like arcade shoot 'em ups, you could do a lot worse. It's got these trippy visuals. The controls are satisfyingly responsive, and yeah, it's a bit simplistic. And so my advice to people is that play the game once you beat level 4, where you defeat the giant star brain for the first time. You're good to stop there because the only reward for completing the entire game, which hey Mike, would you please ask me if I beat Star Soldier?
Did you beat Star Soldier?
I Nintended. Using modern functionality like rewinds and save states, I did all 16 levels. But your reward for beating this game is just text. It just says warp complete. Congratulations. Thank you for playing. No credits, no animations, just nothing. So, since the game just loops every 4 levels, you're good to stop after level 4. But it's kind of a nice diversion while you wait for your pizza rolls to cool off. Fire up Star Soldier. What do you think, Nintendo or Nintendo?
If it wasn't for the trap mechanic, I think I would go a Nintendo because there's
Just
there's
yeah.
stuff I like in the style. I find that trap mechanic makes this so punishingly frustrating that it's Nintendo
Okay.
for me.
Bummer. Okay. Well, you know what that means, Mike? It means it's a tie on Star Soldier, which means we are going to take it to our listeners or listener. So let us know in the comments. Or Mike, can't people vote now? You said something like that. People can vote.
Yes, we should have polls at least on the Spotify version. And
Okay.
remember, every vote matters because you may be the only vote.
Yeah, there we go. Especially now until this podcast takes off and has dozens of listeners. Well, so join us next time where we will be revving and racing our way through the Excite Bike series. We're going to do Excite Bike. versus Excite Bike and Excite Bike 64. So this has been the old switcheroo, where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Like, follow, or subscribe if you think we earned it. Leave a comment, or you can even leave a voicemail for us by visiting theoldswitcheroo.com. We would love to hear from you. Game on, everyone.